to make us
Mhm.
English muffin like pizzas because we couldn't just like go out for pizza on
Yeah.
first Fridays. Like I knew if we went home sick, like she was gonna be there no matter what. Like I knew at school pickup, like she was always there. And I think when I was in fourth grade, she started substituting.
Let Kids Play Podcast. Hi, welcome to another episode of Let Kids Play Podcast. Today I have another special guest for you all. I have Liz with Mommin Around Podcast. I want to say you're my first or second actual podcast guest that has a podcast. So I'm excited. I'm going to let Liz introduce herself to you all and tell us all about your podcast as well.
Hi, that's so exciting that I'm your second guest with a podcast. I always love doing podcast swaps because they're so fun. I feel like there's a certain type of people that start podcasts, and we're always like really chatty and bubbly, and it's just so fun. Like we were chatting before we hit record, and it's always
Yes,
just like such a fun conversation to have with people. So I'm Liz. I'm the
it
host
is.
of the Mommin Around podcast. It kind of birthed out of me being a stay-at-home mom and kind of being in solitude and being a social butterfly and not knowing what to do with myself. So I needed an outlet. And my podcast is just conversations with moms, just like talking about motherhood and what it's like. A lot of birth stories. I love hearing a birth story. A lot about, what I'm going through at the time. So I recently started solids, so a lot of the episodes coming out, I'll ask my guests about solids. Before that, I had a lot of breastfeeding talk because that's what I was going through. It's just kind of like a conversation with moms. I get some advice. If they have a specialty in anything, we'll talk about that. But otherwise, yeah, it's just like a fun conversation.
I love it. I love it because we need that, right? Especially as stay-at-home moms, and you're a new mom, so welcome to motherhood. It
Yeah.
seems lonely at first, but it gets better. I call it bittersweet, because it's a roller coaster like life. You have your moments where you just want to break down and cry in the corner,
Totally, totally. Especially
with
when you
spit
go
up
through
on your
those lack of
shirt.
sleep and you're like losing your mind.
Yes, yes. So I met well, I guess virtually met Liz through a Facebook group that we're in.
Yes.
Because I wanted to have other moms on here that were relatable. I've had a lot of, I guess, educational guests in the past, kind of that specialize in things. But I just wanted to have another mom on here just to chat a little bit as far as your stay-at-home mom journey and kind of what got you. So I know your daughter is almost 7 months. So
Yeah.
before, or how did you get into the stay-at-home mom space? How did that come about, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. That's always been the dream, but it kind of happened by accident. As I mentioned before we even started recording, we are in Texas right now. We're just outside of Austin. We did IVF for 3 years, and IVF was really tough on us. So we needed like a reset. So that's when we decided just to like kind of move somewhere. My husband's really into jujitsu, and Austin is like the capital of jujitsu. And he was like, let's move to Austin to do something, new to, have like a different restart. And when we left New Jersey, we had never done a transfer before. We had one embryo from two egg retrievals, which it was like they kept saying it was a fluke because they couldn't figure out why we weren't getting more embryos. Um, and so we came here, and a few months after being here, I was in a wedding, and everyone was either pregnant or had just had a baby. And I was like, I can't be fully in this new chapter without knowing how the other chapter ends. So let's
Yeah.
transfer and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, we can just kind of move on. So we just transferred. The fertility clinic did not recommend us transferring because they said basically there's a 60% chance of you getting pregnant with one embryo, and we'd rather there be two because then your body's kind of like prepped and primed for the second embryo. And it kind of like understands how to get pregnant better, basically. But against all odds, it worked. And we have our beautiful baby girl, which I'm so proud of. She's amazing. But because of that, we weren't really expecting for it to work. And we were here by ourselves, no childcare, and didn't really know what to do. And I just kind of like fell into being home, which was it's been such a dream. It's been so amazing. Actually
Or what's
went
the
back to New
transfer?
Jersey to do the process. So we started the process here and we had a fertility clinic here kind of monitor me. And then when I was ready to implant, we went there.
Well, congratulations again. I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
that you all got your baby girl. And then, it's things happen when you least expect it.
Totally. Totally.
So were you
Definitely.
working when you went to Austin, or
So I wasn't, and we were just kind of figuring things out, kind of looking for our passions and trying to figure out what we were going to do. We both weren't working at the time. And so when I got pregnant, it was like, oh gosh, now what? And it was like the mad dash to like find something to sustain us. So my husband started applying for jobs, and I was actually applying for jobs. And looking back now, I'm like, what was I thinking? I was like super pregnant going on interviews, and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, how was that going to end well? But I did, and I didn't get, thankfully, I didn't get any of the jobs. So I ended up, being home, and he ended up thankfully finding a job and going into work, which has been great for us.
that's why I asked, because I know you said it's a dream, but we usually stumble into being the stay-at-home mom. Like for me,
Mhm.
it wasn't necessarily a dream, but having my second child, I was like, yeah, I probably need to be at home. And then I got to a point to where she was like 2 or 3, and I decided I want to go back to work because I was in human resources. And I remember
Mhm.
like you going on interviews, except I didn't know I was pregnant. And I was just so emotional because I wasn't getting the job.
Mhm.
And then I remember the day I was sitting in the car at the pickup line for my oldest, and I got the call that I got this job. And then as soon as that call hung up, my phone rang again, and I got a call that I was pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
So it was just, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm meant to be at home as a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah. Totally.
This
Totally.
this is this is my college.
Totally. I grew up with a
I
stay-at-home
love
mom.
that. So
So like it was
okay.
I
So
loved
how was
having
that?
her home. I loved having her home. It was amazing. She is an amazing mom. I mean, she was here for 2 months after I had my baby. Like, she's just an amazing mom. And so, like,
Oh,
I loved that. I loved that I knew if we went home sick, like, she was gonna be there no matter what. Like, I knew, um, at school pickup, like, she was always there. And I think when I was in 4th grade, she started substituting, and that was, like, an easy thing for her to kinda get back into because we were in school, and so her hours were the same as ours. And then in 5th grade, they called her to actually get a teaching job, and I remember I was so upset that she had a job, and she's like, "But you're in school when I'm home, and, like, I get home 15 minutes after you get home, and you get to walk home with your friends, and then, like, I'll be home in 15 minutes." And I remember I was, like, really upset, but I just loved having her home, and I didn't like that I had to, like, share her. But,
yeah.
it was really I had a pretty magical, childhood. Me and my friends always talk about it. We had a really good childhood growing up.
I want to dive into that because I didn't grow up with a stay-at-home mom, so this world was new for me.
Mhm,
And I rarely meet anyone that's a stay-at-home mom that actually grew up with a stay-at-home mom. So outside of just knowing that she was there for you, and you kind of have like the glass window where you can peek into your childhood to see some of the benefits of your childhood, the stay-at-home mom. So what are like the most, I guess, memorable thing of, like her being at home versus maybe like going to work? Or was there something that really, really stood out where you knew that you wanted to follow this path of being a stay at home mom as well?
I think it's a security. And I have to also mention, like, she wasn't a stay-at-home mom for the first probably 2 years of my life, 2.5 years. My sister and I went to a babysitter, and she worked in New York City because we lived right outside New York City. And once she stumbled into being a stay-at-home mom as well. One day she went to the babysitter to drop us off, and she wasn't there. Like, she wasn't answering the door. And she's like, I'm not dropping them off. And she quit that day and just never went back and took us home. And that was it. But I would have to say it's just like the little, like, simple things, we went to Catholic school, and we would have half days every first Friday. And, she would pick us up, and, she was a stay-at-home mom because she wanted to be, but not because we could do it financially. So they definitely, like, cut corners. We never wanted for anything, but we definitely had to, like, cut corners and stuff. And she just made, like, little things magical, and I think that's what it kind of is when any child kind of looks back at their childhood. Like, it's the little things. Like, she used to make us
Mhm.
English muffin, like, pizzas, because we couldn't just, like, go out for pizza on
Yeah.
first Fridays like everybody else did. So she would just, like, come home, and she would make little English muffin pizzas, and I remember they were so great. In the summer, we would do, like, little trips places, like, all the time, but, like, not like, we wouldn't, like, go to the zoo or something. We would, like, just, like, go with her to, like, get her oil changed or something, and she would make that fun, lots of naps with her. She's a big napper, and I remember she's, like, forced us to take naps with her, which were, like, those snuggles are something that's, like, so magical and special when you're little. And yeah, she just made, like, little things fun. She would always, like, take us to school, obviously, in the car, and, like, sing to us and stuff, and we would have, like, little concerts in the car. When my sister was actually in kindergarten, she would drop my sister off at one school because her birthday was in November, and she didn't want her to get held back because she, like, missed the cutoff. So she would drive her to, like, a school, like, 20 minutes
Yeah.
away, take me with her, and then I would sit in the car by myself. I was in, like, second grade, and she would walk my sister into the school, and then she would walk out, and she would drive me to school. And I remember one day I, like, played a prank on her, and I, like, turned the radio up all the way, and she got in the car, and she, like, got scared, and it was, like, a whole thing. But, like, it was just, like, little memories like that, like, because she wasn't, like, in a rush on the way to work or whatever, like, she had that time to just kind of, like, spend it with us and not really worry about it.
I absolutely love that. Like, my heart is singing because it is the little things. Like, when we're in the midst of being a stay-at-home mom and here, you're not quite there yet, but there's a time when you will hear mommy 1,000 times, and you were like, oh my
Totally.
gosh, especially for me because three little ones. But I love the intention behind what you said, and it's the little things, like if you're at home and you're cutting the crust off your little one's bread or something when they're having their lunch, or you're cooking together, because that's what I encourage all of our moms to do, to play and to cook together, cut vegetables and things like that. Those little bonding things are the things that we remember the most. And I
Totally.
love that. I
Totally.
love, I love, I love that. Okay, so you're a stay-at-home mom. I love the journey of the IVF. So, how did the podcast? I know you said you were kind of like feeling alone.
Mhm.
So what sparked the idea of a podcast instead of like a mommy blog?
My husband and I had had a podcast a year prior,
Okay.
and I really liked just talking, obviously. So I wanted a way to kind of connect with other moms and bond over being a mom and kind of get their advice without it being super formal. And I just thought that was the best way to do it. So that's how the
Mhm.
podcast was birthed.
Okay. Okay. So, what is some advice you've got, or some tips that you can give some of our moms?
I have some really fun guests coming on. So one of them was a play therapist or a play.
Okay.
I don't remember how she put it, but basically, like, you have, like, a sleep trainer, right? And,
Yes.
so it's, like, kind of teaching kids, like, how to play independently, and that was a really interesting
Mhm.
episode. She gave a lot of good tips, but, like, I feel like I do, like, a Montessori approach already because I just, like, literally take her along on whatever I'm doing, and I'm not, like, sticking her with a toy in front of the screen or whatever it is. So, I learned that that was the right thing to do. And she does need independent play sometimes, and it's
Samir.
okay to kind of like, yeah. And it's okay to kind of like leave her and let her play by herself and figure things out, and don't try to like overwhelm her with things to distract her
Mhm.
while you need to like walk away for a second. So like one toy is good enough, or even just letting her lay there and explore her body is great. So yeah, I mean, that was like I think the most interesting for me. Also, I had on a nutritionist, and she specializes in like family
Hold on.
nutrition.
Why was it interesting for you?
What was I think because it's you feel like you don't know if you're doing the right thing, right? So I'm like, I'm just doing like if I'm sitting here cooking and she's like sitting in her chair watching me, like, is she really getting anything out of it? And as a mom, you always second guess everything. And I think it was
Mhm.
really validating to hear that, like, yeah, that's the right thing to do. And when you leave her on the floor to kind of like hang out for a second while you run to pee, you're like, am I like neglecting her? Like, is she gonna have like abandonment issues because of this? But no, like it's actually good for her development, like to be able to kind of like be there alone for a little bit.
7-month-old little one, it feels very weird, but at the same time, you have to pee. Like you're gonna have bladder issues. I
I totally.
I developed bladder issues with my first one because I didn't know anything about the play. So now that you know that, I'm glad that a play therapist came on and gave you
Yeah.
that, because I feel like a lot of first time moms need that information. Like I needed that information, I didn't have it,
Hmm.
which is why I started the activity playhouse. So I love that. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that, because that's something that a lot of first time moms need to hear. They need
Yes.
to hear
Yes.
that. I
It's
love that.
important and very
Okay. So
validating.
the
Yeah.
nutritionist, what gives
The
this a drop for you?
nutritionist started out as actually a doctor, a pediatric doctor. She
Mm,
was from
okay.
England and she moved to Spain. But when she moved to Spain, she couldn't be a doctor anymore because her license like didn't transfer. And so she wanted to get into like child
Mhm.
nutrition. And as she was like researching and figuring out exactly what she wanted to do, she realized that the child's nutrition is based on the parent's nutrition. So she actually doesn't do child nutrition. She specializes in nutrition for parents, and then that way that'll kind of like trickle down into the kids. But some things that she kind of taught me, as a kid needs to try something 15 times before they actually know if they like it. And I just thought that was like so many times. And like a lot of times as a mom, you don't want to like push your kid into a food. And so they'll say like, oh, I don't like it, and you'll kind of take it at face value, but they need to try it 15 times before they actually know if they like it.
That, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a doctor, but as a mom of 3 kids, the hack is you continue to eat it, because they're gonna take all your food anyway.
Totally.
So
Totally.
if you continue to eat it on a daily basis, they'll learn to like it.
Totally.
That's
Totally.
how I get my kids to eat fruits and vegetables. So,
Yeah.
and that's, I like that approach, that where you focus on the parent nutrition, because that is the absolute way I get my kids to eat their fruits and vegetables. So my snack is usually like raspberries, blueberries, grapes, and they're always trying to, like, my daughter, she's my picky eater. I don't like to say picky, because I have my kids try everything. Like we try everything, at least once. That's what I tell them. But if it's something that they don't like, because my taste buds are just gone at this point. I'll eat it at this point. So I'll try it and continue to eat it, or add it into my daily routine of snack or
Mhm.
dinner, because they're gonna come and I want some, mommy. So eventually
Mhm.
they end up liking it, or they'll just eat one because I'm eating it. So that's
I love
that
that.
that is right on the nail. The mommy hack is
Yeah,
you eat it.
totally, totally, totally. We're
You
just
eat it,
getting into
they'll
the
eat it.
world of
I love
solids.
that. I love that.
So,
Are you doing
that's
the
around the
baby
corner
led
for me.
wean?
I wish I was brave enough to do the baby-led
Okay.
weaning.
Okay.
I'm not.
Okay. Do you mind me asking why not? What are your fears behind it?
Her choking, like, and I know that, like, she's gonna gag and whatnot, but since she was my PPA was around her breathing, and I don't I think it might have been because the first night that we were in the hospital with her, she kept choking on amniotic fluid because she came out so fast. And after that, like, that's just what my
Mhm,
brain, like, kind of attached to. And so
mhm,
her choking kind
mhm,
of correlates with her breathing. And so I'm like, I just can't get myself to do it. I mean, I did, like, one of the first things I gave her was a whole, like, not whole, like, cut into a spear cucumber to kind of like suck on because I
mhm,
wasn't even ready. The pediatrician told me at 4 months, like 4.5 months, she was ready for purees because she was like sitting up nice and tall and she was like kind of trying to grasp food and like all of that. But I wasn't ready. So that was like my little like introduction into food. And now I'm fully into the purees.
yeah.
And actually, I'm making the purees myself and I wasn't straining them because I figured, thank you. But I wasn't straining them because I figured, okay, like I'm using like I was using an immersion blender. Now I'm using a food processor. But I was like, it's fine. And she
Mhm,
choked on a piece of carrot that was in the puree. And I was like, I was
mhm,
home alone. I was like so confident, just like feeding her the carrot. She was liking it. And
mhm,
then there was a chunk in there that I didn't catch. And I learned my lesson. Now I put everything through a strainer. And I also have a food processor that I use that has a puree setting. But so my worst fear came true without even baby led weaning.
okay. Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like it would be a trigger. So I did it with my last two, but uh, me personally, I wouldn't recommend it for you because it's so much fear behind it, and
Hmm.
it's a trigger for you. And as moms, we have to take care of our mental first. So if you're not
Totally.
comfortable with it, she's not going to be comfortable with it. She's going to feel your energy and stuff. So it's just a lot of nerves that you don't need.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
She'll grab the food eventually. So
Yeah.
I completely understand that. Completely
Yeah.
understand that. That's good that you've looked in it and you've made that decision regardless of, like everyone recommends it, the pediatrician recommends it, but we have to make that decision for ourselves, for our household, and what works for our family and our mental. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Because it's hard. We have to make so many decisions as a mom,
Yeah.
right? So it's hard to go against the grain, so to speak, but it works for you and it
Yeah.
works for your mental state of mind.
Yeah, and I
It's your-
think I, like, really surprised myself being a mom. Before being a mom, I was, like, very much a people pleaser, and it was just kind of like whatever everybody else says, totally fine, I trust them, like, whatever, and since being a mom, like, I really rely on my gut a lot of the time, and I, like, baby step into everything that I don't feel comfortable with, or sometimes I pull the trigger before, like, people even like, so, for example, when we took her home from the hospital, I wasn't making enough milk. And I knew my mom had no milk. She tried, but she just couldn't get her milk supply in at all. Like it just never came in. And she took me to my like 4-day, I guess, pediatrician appointment. And the pediatrician was like, this girl's going to die. You're not giving her food. Like, so you need to start supplementing with formula. You know, you can keep trying, but like, you can't just keep giving her the breast. Like, you're not making milk. So my mom started giving me formula, right? So I came home from the hospital and I knew that was a possibility. And my baby was crying. We went to the pediatrician. She had lost weight, which is normal, I know, but she was sobbing. I think it was like from like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I looked at my mom and my husband. I was like, give her an ounce of formula. Give her an ounce of formula. She's going to stop crying. And they're like, are you sure? Like, you haven't talked to the pediatrician about it. And I'm like, give her an ounce of formula. She will be fine. And I didn't talk to anyone about it. And they weren't really for it. They were like, you're going to the lactation consultant and you're doing everything right. And I was like, give it to her. And they gave it to her and she stopped crying. And poor thing slept for like 7 hours after that. Like she was starving.
Yeah.
And so, like, I feel like I really surprised myself with things like that and kind of just like going with my gut. Another thing was contact naps. She did a ton of contact naps in the beginning. And then actually last week, I just decided, like, I think she's ready to like nap by herself. And so I started to just put her in her bassinet, like completely awake, give her a bottle, let her fall asleep. And she went from taking like fighting me on every nap, taking like really short naps. So like now she takes like a 2-hour nap in the morning. I was talking to you about this, and it's like amazing. And so like I really am just like learning that like my gut is like always right as a mom, and just kind of like going with that and not really listening to what anyone else says.
It's our superpower. It's I call it
Totally.
my spidey senses because my
Yeah,
oldest is 11. So he's realizing like, how did you know that when I'm dealing with my 4-year-old sometimes? And it's my spidey senses, our gut.
totally.
Oh my gosh. First of all, the pediatrician, I hope you changed. I
That
know
was
they
my
were trying
mom's
to come from
pediatrician.
oh,
Yeah,
I was gonna say I know they're coming from good intention, but at the same time, that's not something that you know say to a mom. Regardless
totally. And
of
then after
child
that, my
is
mom got
coming.
scared. Sorry.
Oh,
After
go
that, my
ahead.
mom got scared and she stopped trying to breastfeed because she didn't wanna kill me, and so she didn't ever try again. She just gave me formula and was like, "I don't have milk," and that's that. And then after watching me try to get my milk supply up and supplementing with formula and just really working at getting that milk supply up, she said to me, "I'm so proud of you. I think that had I stuck with it, I would have made some milk for you." And I not that she regrets not trying, but she's like, "You're really like sticking it out and working really hard, and I wish I had done that for you, because I could see it is possible." And I never made enough milk to completely give her breast milk, but I was just determined to give her something.
Yes, because a little bit is more than anything. Even that's
Mhm,
why I'm surprised the pediatrician said that. Like,
mhm,
you can give, a little bit of formula and a little
mhm,
bit of breast milk.
mhm,
And
and
because,
that's
I
what I always
mean,
did.
even with you fully breastfeeding, some days your body is just going to go through things, especially if you get like sick and stuff like that.
Mhm,
Like, you're going to have a point where you supplement. And I know a
mhm,
lot of people don't believe in supplementing.
mhm,
But again, I love that going against the grain, just knowing your baby because you know the different cries. You
mhm,
know the different cries.
mhm.
Surprisingly, oddly enough, God gave us this superpower, and I love it. And I love that you are embracing it because it's rare.
Yeah.
It's rare, and it puts us in such a funk of all the decisions we have to make and all the resources and feedback and information. It's a lot. So I
And
really commend you for that.
thank you. And I think that like we have too much information now. So it's like at this age, your baby should be, or your baby will go through a sleep regression or whatever. I think that recently my biggest frustration is sleep trainers because my baby was not sleeping. And I was about to pay for a sleep trainer that was like $300. And I was like, I should be able to figure this out. And so I took the time and I like felt what she was feeling and like kind of like walked with her through what she needed. And now she's like napping, like I said, and she's like sleeping not through the night, but I mean, she gives us some good stretches. And when she does wake up, like even the sleep trainer said to me, like before I even paid for it, because I didn't end up paying for it, it was developmentally normal for her to wake up 2 to 3 times a night and want a
Mhm.
bottle because that's just how old she is. And so that's what she does now. I mean, before she was waking up like every 45 minutes. And I was like, I need to do something about this. And it wasn't easy. And I sat there with her. I didn't want her to cry it out. And so I was
Mhm.
looking for a sleep trainer that wouldn't cry it out because that just didn't feel right to me. I know some people do it. And if that feels right to you, then kudos to you. It just
Yeah.
didn't feel right to me. So I literally, the first day I did it, I sat with her in the bassinet, didn't cry at all, but like she was in the bassinet. I was sitting on my bed. I was giving her a bottle. We sat there for like 2 hours. I literally took a break. I said, I had my husband sit there. He was on his laptop doing work. I took a shower. I let her like crawl around. 2 hours, and then the next day took like an hour and a half, and the next day took like 45 minutes, and now like I put her down in like 10-15 minutes and she's asleep. But like you don't need, I think that like we think somebody else can like teach us how to take care of our kid, and I think that like if you really tap into what your baby needs, like you can figure it out.
But see, that's that's the other part. And I hope this doesn't offend anyone at all.
Totally.
I'm just speaking my opinion and what I think. I think we don't take the time to tap into that. Like we're so busy to
Mhm.
where we don't it feels like a chore sometimes being a
Mhm.
parent to some of us.
Mhm.
So we don't take the time to tap into that superpower that we have, especially as moms, because you are drained. Some of us are wives, you're working, you're doing 50 million other things.
Mhm.
But I really think that's the issue
Mhm.
with the sleep training, to where you don't have the time or mental capacity to figure it out. And
Yeah.
sometimes we have to slow down so
Yeah.
that we can figure it out, because I don't like the cried out method either. I tried
Mhm.
and I'm like, oh my God, is this
Yeah. No, yeah, me either. I'm like, I
I,
can't listen to her cry for like 2 seconds.
can't do it. Like I
Yeah.
truly tried it. I think I tried it like one day and I told my husband, yeah, I'm not doing this. I'm gonna try something else. And we like my oldest, he was I tell him he tricked us all the time, because he was like the perfect baby toddler.
Mm.
And then my second and third came. It's like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Here are the things.
Yeah.
But he transitioned like 6 weeks. He was in our bed. Like I was co-sleeping, which I know
Mhm.
a lot of people are against, but they make the safe co-sleeping things. I
Totally.
just wanted my child to have that bond and that
Mhm.
connection, which I know there's research and stuff behind the kids can suffocate, but at the end of the day, my baby needed me. I needed
Totally.
my child, and we needed to build that connection, because what I teach my parents is building that connection even early on.
Mhm.
It helps when they become teenagers and they want to stray away. You still have that bond and that connection. And it's crazy that I feel like the world is teaching us to detach from our kids so early.
I
Like,
was gonna say that, yes. You make so many good points there and so many taboo, I think, like, people aren't ready to hear this, I don't think, and I think that, first of all, like, a lot of what we do is unsafe, I think, and we don't really realize it, because if you look at anything, like, things that people suggested to me that had babies 6 years ago are now recalled because they're unsafe, right? And so, no matter what you do, you can't make sure your baby's safe 100% of the time, and you really, again, like I was saying, have to trust your gut on what is best for you and your family. You know, like, I knew when she was a baby, like, when she couldn't roll over and kind of, like, fight for herself, she did not belong in my bed, because I knew my husband would 100% like accidentally either put his arm on her or roll over or whatever it was. And so I didn't feel safe to do that in my bed. And I had the dog in my bed too, which I know people have feelings about that, but she's in my bed as well. And once she got a little older, I want to say like 5 months, maybe not even, I knew she was like old enough that if we like, put our arm on her or did something, like she would complain. And so I felt more comfortable to then like pull her into our bed if we needed it. And honestly, I didn't have like the safe co-sleeping stuff. We do sleep with a blanket. And as a mom, like you're kind of alert even when you're sleeping, because like that, your baby's next to you. And I'm sorry, like, I know
it's
that, like,
crazy.
everyone wants to be overly cautious, but that's just not, you're not in a world where they live in a bubble, and so you have to do what's right for your family. 1, that's the first point you made that I loved. Second point is the detachment. So, like, now we're nervous about going by the book and making sure we can put them in this bubble, but at the same time, it's like people have become so hot and cold about their kids. Like they want to detach at a certain point and like kind of like brush it off and like brush it to like a sleep trainer or brush it to like, I mean, I have my feelings about different things that I don't know if it's too taboo for this podcast, but to kind of push them off and like have things be,
We
what was that? Sorry, I think I lost you for a second.
I, we let it be. Just we talk about it.
And it's just like, I mean, yeah, it's just like, if it's easier for me, then like, and yes, there is a point where your mental health is absolutely important, but you also made a choice to be a mom. And the baby, especially in the early days, need you. And to just want to detach and just want to like throw them in a crib, and like I said, like if you're at a point where you're not sleeping and no one in the house is happy and you decide like let me do like the furball method or cry it out or whatever it is, and like that's like you're at your breaking point, like I totally get it. But if they're like really little and you're just like I'm over them being in my room, like throw them out, like put them in their own room and I'm done with them, like that's something that's a little bit different, because they're still developmentally, they need you. Like they're this little thing that can't fight for themselves, and their instincts are, I'm unsafe. And even like if you think back to when you were a little kid, when you were like really little and it was dark, like you were scared. And that's before,
Yep.
and we're talking before you have memories as a baby, and you're just going to stick them in a room. Like they want to smell you and know you're around. And that's why I love how you talked about co-sleeping, because I think that's, I wasn't brave enough to do it in those first days, but we did have a bassinet with the side that dropped. And so, I would like put my hand there and, just make sure she smelled me, because that's how they feel secure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That is one. And it's about building trust. So me
Yes.
working with little kids under 5, it's a lot of kids that don't really trust their parents.
Yes.
And it's kind of sad and unfortunate. And I think that comes from us. And it's not like an intentional detachment. It's like you said, like if you're going by the book, it's like the world is teaching you to detach from your child.
Right.
Just like if you're going by the book, the world is teaching you not to play or let your little
Yes.
ones play. They need to be in front of
Right.
a worksheet and holding
Right.
a pencil at 2 and 3 years old. That's not
Right.
developmentally appropriate. And if it is
No.
for your child, that's good, that's fine. But in my opinion, and from all the things that I've read, it's not appropriate. Their bones and
No.
muscles aren't even fully developed to hold the pencil. Like let your little ones
Right.
play with Play-Doh. So I just think we have to like really go with our gut and our
Totally.
instincts and our mommy spider senses
Totally. And it's
to let
all of
our little ones
society.
just be. And
Totally. I was in elementary education before I was a mom. So I started as a teacher for almost 10 years, and then I went on to the
okay,
child study team. So I tested kids for disabilities and give them IEPs and whatnot. And a lot of times I would have like a kindergarten, first
okay.
grade teacher come on and just be like, well, they're bouncing off the walls or they won't sit still. And I would have to say to them, it's not developmentally appropriate for them to sit still. It's not. If they wanna bounce off the walls, that's developmentally appropriate. They have energy to burn, like, they need to play.
They need to play. Like you sit. First of all, for us sitting in a chair for a long period of time, it's not appropriate for us, our hips, our knees. So if you have a 5 or 6 year old, I need you to do some yoga moves. I need you to do a freeze dance. Like they
Mhm,
need those brain breaks, and they need that period to
yeah,
just move. Like they
yeah,
need that. And that's
I know, and the
that
impulsivity too, like,
that just
and which boggled my mind, because you're talking teachers who have studied child development, and to not understand that, like, they can't control their impulses, like, in even like 3rd grade, like you're still a baby, and they would expect them to be like militant, like big kids, and it's like they're not. They're not. It's you're prepubescent, like you're literally still a baby.
listen. So I try to do like different morning out programs and stuff like that because my little one is really just like he's beyond a social butterfly. He wakes up and he screams, "Hello!"
I love that.
He's beyond a social butterfly. He walks to the playground. Hey, everybody, I'm here. So
Oh my
he's
gosh.
beyond he's the social butterfly. So I try to do like different morning out programs for him. So we recently moved back to North Carolina and I tried this program. And when I walked in, it's 2 to 4 years old, 2 to 4 year olds. And they were all sitting down at the table quiet. Like when I walked in, it was completely quiet. I was thinking, is anyone even here? So when my little one walked in, and he was walking around classroom checking it out, and they're like, "Oh, sit down." I'm like, yeah, this probably is not the place for us. If I walk into a building or a room and there kids there is like 8 kids and I don't hear them, it's not the place for us. It's not the place for
Totally.
us. Like you said, they're not supposed to be militant. Like I don't know. Even my fifth grader, he has to get outside. We have to move. We have to be active. Like I know this is a lot of my stuff is against the grain. He plays basketball in the house, like because he has to move. It's just what it is.
Mhm.
It's just what it is.
I
It's
know,
just what
and
it
I
is. And
think
that's
that
oh,
harboring what they like to do is also makes them feel safe. And I always did that as a teacher too. Even with I was the special ed teacher in an inclusion room. And so I would have like, like an autistic kid who needed to like
sorry, what is
literally.
an inclusion room?
Oh, an inclusion room is when you have some general education students and some special education students in the same room. And so that's just kind of to expose
Okay,
both of
okay.
them to either, learning styles. The great thing was if someone who was, a general education student was struggling in, let's say, math, they would come and they would have me as their teacher, like in a small group, and I could help them kind of catch up with the rest of the class. And they would just need a little bit of, help. And then they could move on and, keep going or whatever. But so anyway, but tapping into the students, what they needed and how to build trust that way was just like so important. And I take that into like being a mom too. Obviously, she's very little. But I had a student specifically who needed to like sit under my desk for like 5 minutes at a time here and there just to like reset. And I was like, yeah, go ahead, do it. I remember the first time he was doing it, someone came in to test him and was like, he's under your desk. And I'm like, yeah, it's what he needs. He was in fifth grade. So, as a fifth grader, like developmentally, that's not appropriate. But if that's what he needs, like 5 minutes under my desk, and then he's going to come back and be a great student, like let it happen. And so I think that like that's just like tapping into like their needs and what they want and their what they like too is just like so important as a mom, as a teacher, as anyone who's even like around kids.
That you're speaking my language because that's what I teach the parents. Like a lot of people look at it as, oh my God, like she has this magic touch with the kids, and it's truly me just seeing them, because a lot of the adults don't even see the kids. So getting down at their level, talking to them, acknowledging them versus just acknowledging the adult. And then I love that you let that little one get up under your desk. To me, that's their safe space. I call it the cozy corner.
Totally.
Sometimes
Mhm.
they need to reset. Like we even have a
Mhm.
cozy corner here in our homeschooling classroom. We're rarely in here, but they have a safe space, and my kids have one in their room. But I encourage every family to have like a safe space for the little ones, like a cozy corner and a
Mhm.
creative space for them to just be all do. That's their space to their yes zone, whatever you want to call it, to just tap into what they truly, what their gut is telling them, so to speak, because they have a gut too. Parents, they have a gut too, so they have
Totally.
to tap into that as well. I
Yes.
absolutely love that. You covered a valid point.
Yeah, and also you saying that you kinda get down on their level, like, that's 100% true at any stage, like, even the newborn stage, like, I remember talking to my husband doesn't have, the mom gut because he's not a mom, and that's okay, but I remember, like, she was, like, 2 weeks old, she's, like, still a blob, she's, like, not really interacting, and it doesn't matter, like, I would say to him, like, "She's a human, like, you can't just, like, hold her, give her a bottle, and, like, zone out on your phone. Like she's human. Like, would you want someone to
Oh,
just zone out while they were
her.
doing something? Like she's a human. Like you need to treat her like a human, even if you don't feel like she's interacting back. She's taking in everything that's happening around her. Like you need to make sure that you're acknowledging her and getting down on her level no matter what it seems like. Even as silly as like just like narrating what you're doing all the time. Like it's just like she's a human. Like she wants to be a part of our world.
Oh my gosh, you have to, I mean, because you talk to yourself in your head anyway. So you might as well just talk to your child. And eventually,
Totally.
so that is so key. And I don't want people listening to this to miss that. Um that helps them develop so many words and vocabulary, because we think they aren't learning. They learn everything, they absorb every little thing, which is why they say that the little ones' brains are sponges. Like I
Mhm.
remember I was studying for finishing up my degree. And my second one, she was about 5 months, I want to say. I used to read my textbook to her. She's in my arms, breastfeeding or whatever, and I need to study. So I'll just read to her. Like if she got up in the middle of the night and she needs to breastfeed, I'll put her on me and I'll read my book out to her. I have to read it anyway, and might as well read it to her, read it out loud to somebody because she's here. Why not, interact? And like you said, your husband, we have to get them like, hey, talk to him. It feels weird. Talk to them or like interact with them. Get on the floor with them. Like that part is important. I remember someone always on the floor with my little ones. They're on the floor, so I get down with them. So I like that. I like that. So, do you have any other tips for a new stay-at-home mom, especially with your educational background? I love you're just like the one size fit all. Yes, the educational background, stay-at-home
Thank
mom,
you.
and podcaster. I love
Um,
that.
I would say, I know that we just kind of like covered it, but take your little one with you on everything that you like to do. And I play music in the morning. I do get bored. Like I have ADHD. And so I do get bored. So, I'll play music in the morning and we'll sing to that while I change her diaper or whatever. And then I'll, make breakfast and like take her along with that. And I'm just taking her along on things that I do. And it gets to a point where she gets kind of tired. I'll let her play by herself for a little bit, pick her back up. But then even on days that like I haven't, knock on wood, I used to get migraines chronically. I haven't, but I got like one here and there. And like on days that I'm just like tired because we haven't slept, I know screen time is like controversial, but if I want to like put on a show because I'm not feeling the best, I like take her along that journey with me too. Like we watched Love is Blind together and I like talk to her about that. And I'm like, what do you think? Like, what do you think's gonna happen next episode? And I treat her like a girlfriend. Like she can't talk back to me, but
I was gonna say girl time. Girl
exactly.
time. I love that. So we're just here because a lot of people are against screen time and they believe that because I promote play, I'm against screen time as well. I'm not. I'm for you using it to your benefit where it works for you. If you're feeling
Mhm,
like drained, having a migraine, why not do the screen time? Because
mhm.
it's a short break relief for you and your little one. You're not throwing her in front of the screen 24/7, 365.
Right.
Use it to your benefit. So with me homeschooling, I take a nap every day from 2 to 3. My little ones are in the bed with me. That's their technology time.
Yep.
My
Yep.
nap is their
Totally.
technology time. So you
Yeah.
use it to your benefit. I love,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. But yes, you have to treat your little ones. I'm sorry, my brain is just going because when you said that made me think about when she's older and you all get to sit on the couch and watch shows together. You've already made that connection for her. I
Totally.
love that.
Totally.
I love
And
that.
I don't watch kids shows because she doesn't know it's like she doesn't wanna watch her kid shows right now, like, she's not at that age where she can, like, demand things, so we watch what I wanna watch, and that's her screen time.
And that, so how does that make you feel? Because as a stay-at-home mom, you said that it does get lonely, which it truly does, especially when they're younger, because they're not really talking back to you like that. You get the clues and stuff like that, but it does feel alone. So how does that make you feel being able to watch the show with someone and talking with someone?
Yeah, it's like having a girlfriend, like you said, we have a little girl time. I also, speaking about being lonely, when I started to feel like I was going insane, I started taking walks every day because that's what everybody suggested. It didn't really help me because I wasn't around people when I was taking walks. It was just me, her, and the dog, and I would put in a podcast and kind of like walk. And so I enrolled her in music class, swim class, and gymnastics. So she is like the most active 6-month-old ever, but that's what worked for me. And I got out of the house and I feel good every time I go somewhere.
I love it. I love it. It gets busy. It gets busy, but it gets you into a routine. So I had a guest on here. She's all about wellness for moms. So I want to ask you: have you penciled yourself in on the schedule as well?
Definitely, especially now that she's napping. So In the morning, when she takes her nap, I make my breakfast. I sit on the couch, I journal, I have my meditate, I have my little time to myself. I have my, coffee uninterrupted and all of that. And then once she goes to bed, we have couple time because that's hard to find too. So we
Oh,
make it a point to like tell each other about our days and we eat while she's awake because I think that's important. I know that like a lot of couples like to put their baby to bed and then eat, but like having her there at the table with us and us interacting and her watching
mhm.
us eat, and what we're putting in our bodies, I think is really important. So we definitely eat while she's awake and then we'll put her down and then we'll have our time. So like we'll, talk to each other, play a game, watch a show, depending on like what we're feeling that night. But so yeah, so I have me time and I have couple time because I was also starting to feel a little disconnected from my husband.
Yeah, I love that, and it's so weird to say, but it's not happening. Like, we need to be sitting at the tables with our little ones eating as a family. Like, can we get back to eating at the table as a family? Like, everyone come down to the table and we eat dinner together. Whether we're eating at the table or we're eating on the couch, it's about you all being together. And that's where a lot of the communication skills are built, at the dinner table. Like,
Mhm.
so there's this thing about little ones, a lot of little ones having like a speech delay and things like that. This We're missing the connection at home. Talk to your little ones at the dinner
Mhm.
table. That will improve a lot of the speech issues that we're starting to see. They don't, I mean, and there are some true speech issues, but sometimes they don't have to go to a speech therapist.
Mhm.
Sometimes they just need to talk to you at the dinner table. Put the
Mhm.
devices away and just sit and connect at the dinner table. Even in a high chair, they're absorbing, looking around, and it's so cute because as they get older, they're looking back and forth from people that are talking because they hear it. So
Yeah,
I love that. I love that you put yourself on the schedule. I love that you put your husband on the schedule.
totally. I think that I just
Was
wanna
it
speak to the
easy?
speech delay. Was it easy? No, and then at first, obviously, she was waking up all the time, so we'd be interrupted. So you just kinda have to have patience at first, and then she'll get used to it, and you'll get your alone time eventually, but it does take a little bit of time to be able to get that again. I just wanted to mention you brought up the speech
Okay.
delay, and, I think that that's a society thing too. I think that, like, if you look at the people who interact with your kids when you're out now, um, it's always, like, an older especially in Texas, it's always, like, an older, very Southern person, and I'm saying, like, older, like, in their, like, 70s, and it's never, like, the younger
Yeah.
generation, and I don't know if it's because
Hmm.
we are we're afraid to be creepy or we're afraid to overstep like any kind of boundary, but instead of I feel like the younger generations, instead of talking to kids, we're talking over kids, and I think it's important to include them more in conversations and in like society in general as young as 6 months, honestly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So it does. So, because I'm just naturally drawn to babies and little ones, so it does get a little creepy sometimes. But you can kind of
Mhm.
sense them.
Yes,
So.
yes, I love that, I love that. I was at the vet today with my dog and my baby, and I walked in and, they acknowledged the dog and they pet the dog and they didn't acknowledge the baby, and then totally fine. She was smiling, but, it's okay. And then we walked into the room and the tech said like, mentioned the baby, but didn't talk to her. And then the vet came in, and again, older man, and he walked right up to Kala and was like cooing at her and being like, "You're so cute. How old are you?" And she was smiling and getting, interacting with him and getting so excited. And then that's when the younger tech felt like comfortable to be like, "You are so cute," and kind of same. But I think that, and I totally get it because parents are a little bit more,
Hmm.
the world we live in is scary, right? And so they're a little bit more
It is.
reserved with their baby. And I am very paranoid and I'm always like, does this person have an ulterior motive? But if you're in a safe space too, like I'm at the vet, like I know the vet isn't gonna like try to kidnap my kid, so like
Yeah,
I know this, the cashier at the supermarket isn't trying to kidnap my kid. Now if you come up to me like randomly in an aisle and you're getting a little too close to my baby, then that's like another thing,
that's different.
but I think including baby in society and kids in society and letting them have a voice is like very important.
It It truly is because it builds their confidence. My middle child, my daughter, she had a speech issue where she started stuttering.
Okay.
So we started talking more. We already talked as a family, but we did end up having to go to speech therapy just to talk more. So we play Barbies way more than I want to, and we talk with that. Or we may grab a microphone because of the podcast, and that helped a ton to where she had gotten into a stage of where she was afraid to speak in public. Now she'll talk to the librarian. She'll say, can I ask them the question if we're confused about something? Can I do the checkout? And I remember me and my husband were so surprised. We went up to a fine dining restaurant with 3 kids. First of all, I was terrified, like something was going to happen, something's going to go
Mhm.
wrong. But it didn't, because my 4-year-old a wild child. But the waitress came to the table and she actually acknowledged them. And my daughter, she was very vocal. She made sure her voice projected so that the waitress could hear her. And we were just blown away, like,
Yeah,
okay, we got this. So just even stuff like that, letting them order their
so
own food.
important.
Yeah, like even at drive
100%.
through, I roll down the window and let them order their own stuff.
Oh, I
So
love that. So
just
important.
including them,
Yeah,
including them.
definitely, definitely. It's just really important. I think we're kind of losing sight of it. And like I said, I get it. We live in a scary world. But I think that also teaching them like who's safe and who's not safe, like who you can kind of, if someone walks up to you in the aisle at the grocery store and says, "Hey, I have candy in my van," like don't be like, "Sure, what kind of candy?" to them, but if you're putting in your like coupon, whatever it is, and they need your phone number, that's a person that you can talk to and you can give them your phone number.
And so teaching that young, because I encourage parents to teach everything before 5: safety, phone number, address.
Mhm.
Um, this is what we do. This is what we don't do. Like all that stuff should be taught, in my opinion, before 5. Because once they're out into the world, especially if you don't plan on homeschooling, it's harder.
Mhm.
So like my 11-year-old, speaking to what you said about what's safe and what is not safe, they are exposed to so much in the digital world and the
Mhm.
internet, to where you have to constantly have those conversations.
Mhm.
I was giving my address to someone on another podcast episode for her to send me something from her store.
Mhm.
And my son asked, well, why are you giving her your address? Why are you giving
Mhm.
the lady from the podcast your address? And I explained to him she had a store, and instead of me going into the store, she was putting the information in for me. And it was like me ordering for Amazon, just breaking that down, because he's like, you're giving somebody on the phone your address, and that doesn't
Mhm.
seem right?
Mhm.
So it's just having those conversations and starting them early, which
Mhm.
is why he asked me. So that's a very, very valid point. Let them interact, but also teaching them what's safe and what's not safe.
Yeah. I remember my mom was really good at this. She would always, if we were in the bathroom with her, she would say, like, "You never let a man come into the bathroom with you. You never let anyone touch here." And we were young. Like, I remember, like, these are some of my first memories. Like, never let any, and if they do, you tell me no matter what. You tell me no matter what. And luckily, I never had any kind of trauma like that in my life. But like, just her being so open about it and just always talking to us about it, I think is so important. I have a niece, and she also, I was like one of those kids that like when I got my period, I was like totally ready for it because she was very open about that, about what's gonna
Yeah.
happen and about what it means. And I remember when I had my, or not when I had, when my sister-in-law had my niece, I had my period, and she was like, "No, she can go in the bathroom with you and see that." And I had to like explain a period to her because she's like, "Why are you bleeding?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is like a good lesson in being a mom," which I think that like nieces and nephews are like the biggest blessing. They're like such a lesson in like learning how to like be a parent before you're a parent. And she definitely is that for me. And I remember having that conversation with her, like, yeah, sometimes you bleed as a woman and you'll get it one day and it doesn't hurt and everything's okay. But yeah, just having those like hard conversations as young as possible is so important, because I remember, you know, we learned things at school that my mom was waiting to kind of have conversations with us about. And when she found out that we learned it, she was so upset. And she was like, I wanted to be the first one to talk to you about it. And she was good on a lot of things, but a couple things, you know, just kind of slipped through the cracks. And I think it's so important to have all the tough conversations before they can be exposed to it. In a
Yep.
world like today where there's the internet, they're exposed to it much earlier than you would want them to be.
Yes, and teaching, oh my God, body awareness is so important. I'm not gonna say the specific body part names, but it's important to teach our little ones that. And I'm not gonna lie, it backfires with the boys. It didn't backfire with my daughter, but teaching them early, they said it at the playground, and I'm like, oh my God. But boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
Totally,
But teaching
totally.
them the proper names of their body parts and how to be able to vocalize that. I mean, everything goes back to that bond, the security, the trust, and being able to express themselves in a safe space.
Yes. And the more you expose them to in your home and you kind of give them that information, the more you build trust, the more they feel safe coming to you if something does happen, or if something, you know, they're not sure about something. They don't feel like they have to hide it from you. They can kind of express to you like, was this okay? Or what did this mean? Without
They'll
any
tell
kind
you
of fear.
everything. They will
Right.
tell you everything. You may get the inappropriate. We're all moms. You may get the inappropriate. What color their bowel movements were. So you're gonna get everything.
Totally. Yes.
Well, Liz, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I enjoyed this. I
Me
enjoyed.
too.
I can't
It was
wait to
so
get on
fun.
your podcast. I
Yes.
can't wait. So you gave the last tips. So let us know where we can listen to your podcast and your social media on where we can follow you.
Yeah. So my personal social media is Liz_Mercedes_. The podcast social media is Mommin Around Podcast. And the podcast is Mommin Around on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. So I do have videos for all of them, which is fun. And I'm also on TikTok too, Mommin Around Podcast.
Okay. All right. So I dropped it below where you all can follow her and check out her amazing podcast. There were some funny clips that I saw on her IG, so make sure you check that out as well.
Thank you.
I
Thanks
love
so
it.
much for having me. This was so fun.
It was. Thank you for joining me. And you all, thank you for listening on this episode. Please be sure to give us a like, leave us some feedback on today's episode, 5 stars if you're on the Apple Podcast. And we can't wait to talk to you again on the next episode of Let Kids Play Podcast.